Well, welcome back. Navigating trade as Brexit negotiations forge on. Global trade remains a focal point for UK leaders, including Prime Minister Theresa May. Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin spoke about a deal between the US and the UK while he was in Davos a few weeks ago, saying that the US is prepared to negotiate. Joining us right now is British Consul General in New York and Her Majesty's Trade Commissioner for North America, Antony Phillipson. Good to see you, Antony. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to be here.
We appreciate this. We want to really get some clarity on when we'll hear more in terms of the plans for Brexit. Because when I was actually in Europe just recently, there was a lot of discussion about how now the UK is the underperformer. And it's largely because Theresa May hasn't really shown that she has this mandate. There's too much waffling going around. So start there. When are you expecting the details of the plan to leave the European Union to be finalized and to be communicated?
Well, thank you very much, Maria, and it's a great pleasure to be here and have the chance to talk about this topic, which, of course, is such an important one for my country. The process has begun. We're into the negotiation. We began it in March last year when we launched the Article 50 process. There were substantive negotiations in the back end of last year, reaching the agreement on sufficient progress and withdrawal. Now we start talking about implementation, and we will also start talking about the future partnership. And people will always want more detail. Business will always want more detail. They hate uncertainty.
Well, they can't make their plans. Yeah. They've got to either, stay in London or go to Germany, like financial services companies.
So we talk to the business community a lot, and we will start laying out the detail. We have made clear that in terms of the implementation period, we expect to provide a period of certainty that will go beyond March 2019, and that is a shared ambition between the UK and the EU, and there is also a shared ambition between the UK and the EU about the future partnership. We are in the middle of the negotiation, so detail will come through as it is available, and that will happen over the next few weeks and months.
Where are you guys on the corporate tax side? Because I know you guys are at 19% now. There's a plan to take it down to what, 17% over the next 3 years. Is that a contentious issue in negotiating Brexit? Because I know there's been some issues with Ireland recently, and you have a third-party superstate, which is the EU, invoking, it's trying to invoke its powers over sovereign states. So where are you guys on the tax negotiation aspect of Brexit?
So in terms of the overall negotiation, where we are, as I say, is in terms of how do we work out this partnership in the future, and it will be a partnership between the UK and the EU. On the tax side, as you say, we have been, this is a programme of corporate tax reform that's been going on pre the referendum, and we're still in the middle of that. Tax is not an EU competence. Tax is not an issue that is sort of run out of Brussels. All member states set their own tax. The EU has said in its guidelines that it will want to be clear that we are not, acting in a way that will be sort of out of kilter with the EU. But actually, that's the big question, which is what is going to be the nature of this future relationship. I think there will continue to be a lot of scope for the UK to set a very clear and effective tax regime that will be attractive for inward investors, attractive for people who want to come and set up and do business in the UK.
What do you want to see from the US in terms of trade?
What we want to see from the US actually is more of the same. I mean, the UK-US trade partnership is incredibly deep. It's very extensive. We are the biggest. They are our biggest export market. They're our biggest source of inward investment. But what we want to do now, as we come out of the EU, is to take that relationship into the future around the new technologies like artificial intelligence, data, driverless vehicles, life sciences, financial services. These are areas of real sort of commonality between the UK and the US, and we want to build that partnership for the future.
So apparently, Theresa May reportedly prepared to accept these new demands from the EU to move Brexit divorce rate up 3 months to December 31st, 2020. Is that in the plans?
We're in the middle of a negotiation. The Prime Minister has always said that she expects the implementation period to last around 2 years. The EU, in their initial framework, have proposed up until December 2020, but that is precisely the subject of the negotiation now.
I guess the reason that I focused on trade a moment ago is because everything is up in the air at this point. And, President Obama had said a couple of years ago, look, if the UK goes forward with Brexit, they're going to be at the bottom of the line. Where do you feel you are in terms of doing a bilateral deal just with the US in terms of trade?
So I think where we are is we're in the mix. I mean, there is clearly a very sort of dynamic conversation going on, actually all around the world, about trade liberalisation. In terms of the UK-US discussion, in July last year, the Secretary of State for International Trade, Liam Fox, with his counterpart Bob Lighthizer, launched something called the Trade Investment Working Group. That will talk about a whole host of issues that will strengthen and deepen the relationship between our countries, including beginning to talk about a bilateral free trade agreement, which both sides have committed to at the highest level, the Prime Minister and the President, when they met in January, when they met again in Davos last month. months. But we know that we need to do it at the appropriate time. And we know that some on this side will want to know where we're going to end up with the EU. So the tracks will run alongside each other, but we will push forward on all of them as fast as we can.
All right, we'll be watching. Antony, thanks very much for the update.
Thank you very much indeed.
Antony Phillipson there.